Scott Coker says that Bellator are not currently interested in signing free agent Kevin Lee following his UFC release. The former interim lightweight title challenger was let go by Dana White & Company last week after suffering setbacks in 4 of his past 5 Octagon appearances. Kevin Lee was admittedly shocked by his release, and the way he was let go left a sour taste in his mouth. Given the fact that Kevin Lee's most recent losses came against either perennial contenders or current champions, it was thought that Lee would have an easy time finding a new home. One of the possible suitors that most fans were leaning towards was Bellator MMA. However, Scott Coker told MMA Junkie that the promotion currently has no interest in signing the former UFC standout. "We only have so many slots. Right now, we're really happy with our current roster." During a recent livestream on his YouTube channel, Michael Bisping was asked by a fan who was physically stronger out of George St. Pierre and Dan Henderson. He had the following response: "George didn't feel that strong, if I'm honest, and neither really did Dan. Dan never really took me down. George took me down on some good entries because he timed them well, but I was able to get back to my feet pretty well. I never felt like I was overpowered from either, but we'll go with George, because Dan is a dickhead. Dan Henderson is a first-class dickhead. If you like him, I apologize. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I saw Dan Henderson on the plane a while back. I saw him a few times when I was calling the fights. I asked him how he was doing and whatnot. Of course, we fought twice, but in my mind, that was all water under the bridge. So when I see him, I say hello and give him the respect that he's due. And then one night, I was commentating from Fight Island, and he got on Twitter and started talking a bunch of shit. So there we go. Dan Henderson is a dickhead." UFC lightweight contender Dustin Poirier is looking to test Justin Gaethje's theory on champion Charles Oliveira when he meets the Brazilian at UFC 269. Oliveira had UFC gold wrapped around his waist for the first time at UFC 262 in May this year. After Khabib vacated the title, Oliveira faced newcomer Michael Chandler for the belt in a memorable main event clash. Despite looking moments away from defeat in the opening round, Oliveira survived and mounted a remarkable second-frame comeback, emerging victorious via TKO. The result saw Oliveira reach the UFC mountaintop after 26 fights in the promotion. His championship crowning was added to a host of accolades, including the records for most submission wins, most finishes, and highest finishes per win percentage in UFC history. Following his victory over Chandler, one of Oliveira's lightweight peers wasn't impressed. Former interim champ Justin Gaethje claimed that even in defeat, Chandler showed that Oliveira is a quitter. That's despite the fact that the Brazilian overcame early adversity to finish Chandler. Despite not necessarily agreeing with Justin, Dustin Poirier does intend on testing his theory when he enters the cage with Charles. In a recent interview with MMA Junkie, he revealed his intention to test Oliveira's perseverance by dragging him to deep waters. "I would love for the fight to reach that point to where we'll find out if Oliveira can dig deep in front of the world. That's a goal of mine, to get this fight into deep waters and see who really wants it more, who is willing to bleed more, and leave it all out there. Because I know I will, no question about it. I'm saying the same shit over and over again every interview. It feels corny, but when a fighter goes out there, our last fight is the most important. He got hurt, came back in the second round, and showed his championship grit and finished Michael Chandler, a guy that just took Justin to hell. So if that says anything, you're as good as your last fight. He's a world champion." UFC bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling has provided his own blueprint for how he'd try to defeat Jose Aldo. Last Saturday night, MMA fans across the globe watched on in awe as Jose Aldo turned back the clock once again with an emphatic win over Rob Font. The unanimous decision success took him up to a 3-fight win streak and left many believing he's now just 1 win away from another shot at the bantamweight strap. Aljamain Sterling, on the other hand, has been out of action through injury ever since he captured the 135-pound belt from Petr Yan via disqualification. With Sterling vs. Yan being proposed for early next year, and Aldo being on the outside looking in, Aljamain recently spoke about the strategy he'd try and implement if he ever had to defend the title against the Brazilian. "I think you've just got to stay in his face the whole time. That's my personal opinion. When he started taking Rob Font down, he was a fish out on land, so to speak. He's a black belt. He's a legend. He's done what he's done in the history books for a reason. But I do believe I have the tools to beat every one of these guys in the bantamweight division."